All right, this is the movements and muscles of the elbow. So remember that when we're talking about movements regarding the elbow, you have to start from anatomical position. That's with the palm of your hand facing forward, arms next to the body. The elbow is only able to move in one joint. So even though you can kind of move your elbow around, if you're talking just about anatomical position, you're talking about the sagittal plane, frontal, horizontal axis. So 5 muscles really act on the elbow. There's 3 for flexion, 2 for extension. Flexion would be your brachialis, brachioradialis, and of course the biceps brachii, which is the one most people think of for elbow flexion. And then for extension, we have 2, the primary muscle being the triceps brachii. There's also a small muscle called the anconeus that contributes to that movement as well. We have 4 movements that supinate and pronate the forearm. So remember, supinating is turning your palm up, pronate, turning the palm down. Again, the biceps contributes significantly to supination, as well as the muscle called the supinator, which sounds like a superhero to me. And the pronation muscles both have the name pronator in them. Pronator quadratus, which is shaped like a square, so obviously that's where the name comes from. And then pronator teres, which is a long round muscle that helps with pronation of the forearm. All right, so if we're looking at the anterior muscles on the elbow, you can see that all 3 of these are going to contribute to flexion of the elbow, and the biceps also does do supination. They all have an origin up within the humerus and then insert down onto either the ulna or the radius. So here's a picture. You can see your biceps here again has 2 heads coming down, and it's going to insert right into that radial tuberosity. You have the brachialis underneath, which is a smaller muscle, and then the brachioradialis, which is a longer muscle that goes all the way down to the wrist. This is the muscle we think of when you're going to pick something up and drink it. You're actually using this. So if you're doing some exercises with weights, when you do a biceps curl, you've got your palm facing up. When you do what's called a hammer curl, you have your palm sort of facing sideways, and that's going to isolate this muscle a little bit more because it's kind of that, picking something up and drinking it action. So if you're going to look at them, here's your biceps, okay? Brachialis in here, just to make it stick out a little bit more. And here's our friend demonstrating his nice biceps. Okay, and then the brachioradialis just running along the side of the arm there, okay? All right, so what muscle do we find beneath the biceps brachii? And that's going to be your brachialis. It just lives underneath the biceps. And then the muscle that performs picking something up and drinking it, that's going to be your brachioradialis. All right, on the posterior side, you got your triceps brachii. So obviously it has 3 heads. The long head is the only one that crosses the shoulder joint. The other 2 are starting within the body of the humerus, and then all of them insert onto the olecranon via the triceps tendon, which you can feel at the back of your elbow, and that's going to do straight extension of the elbow. Any position you're in, doesn't matter, the triceps is doing extension of the elbow. Now the anconeus is a very small muscle. It starts at the lateral epicondyle and attaches to the olecranon. Those are very close together. So this is what we call a synergist muscle. It's going to assist the triceps in extension of the elbow. So the triceps is the main muscle or the prime mover, and this is your synergist. So here's where you can see the triceps, okay? And the anconeus here, just a very small little guy. Here's what it looks like on a person, okay? And then the triceps, you can kind of see, here's 1 head, 2 heads, 3 heads, okay? You can isolate those. As far as the forearm, again, we've got those 4 muscles that affect it. Pronator teres coming from that cornoid process, so it's at the front of the U of the ulna, and it's going to insert onto the radius. Pretty small muscle. Does pronation, turning the palm of your hand down. Pronator quadratus is going to be further down in the radius. You can actually kind of see it if you resist your pronation of your hand, and it's going to be more down towards the distal third of your forearm, and that does the pronation. The supinator coming from the proximal aspect of the ulna to the proximal aspect of the radius, and just straight supination, and then the biceps, same as it was previously, inserting onto the radial tuberosity and causing the supination of the forearm. So that's it for muscles and movements. Pretty simple on those guys. Again, here's a picture if you want to see where the biceps is coming down, and then this one shows you better your supinator, your pronator teres, which you can see is a nice long round muscle. That's why it's named that. Pronator quadratus would actually be more down in this area in the lower part of the forearm. All right, here's pronator teres. There's your pronator quadratus. You can see it's almost down by the wrist, and the supinator wrapping around the elbow here. All right, what is the pronator quadratus named for? Its shape. It's a square. And then just on the distal ulna, it's stabilized in the distal radioulnar joint. That's where the pronator quadratus is. So when that muscle activates, it's actually going to pull the radius over top of the ulna. And whenever you're in class next, come grab the little skeleton arm of the wrist and forearm, and you can really see how that action occurs. You can feel it on your own wrist, but it's easier to see when you have just the bones involved. Okay, and then when you contract the biceps, you're going to have a radial rotation externally or laterally, which will cause your forearm to supinate. So it's like bringing your thumb up and over, pointing outside of the arm into that anatomical position. All right, that's the end of this part of the lecture.